My name is Osei-Frimpong, and you have to understand that one of my long-term projects is to help explain Trump's America to you, because if you don't watch out, the Democrats might be cooked into the near future as the opposition to Trump's America either waits for the Republican Party to implode of its own devices, or it just throws out, epithets like dumph or calls Donald Trump stupid names. But instead, we actually have to realize why his program, insofar as it is a program, makes sense or has some sort of appeal. And today we're going to talk a little bit about civic sovereignty and what civic sovereignty means when I say it. So sovereignty is the ability to make choices of your own power, of your own reflection, and not be determined by external forces. So civic sovereignty would be the United States' ability to decide what's made and produced and consumed in the United States, and not have that decision be made by either the CCP or the Knesset or either AI. We want people, American citizens, deciding what gets to be made and produced and the boundaries within which things are made and produced in the United States, right? So the CCP you have to worry about, because now, for example, in the culture industry, Marvel movies will now run their script by the CCP censor to make sure that it'll get play in China so that they can drum up worldwide revenue. So the content of your nearest Spider-Man or Iron Man movie is actually determined by the CCP censors rather than, the market in the United States, right? Now, this is after Marvel's already run that script by the Pentagon, so that the Pentagon lets it play with all of its toys, so that every time you see a jet or a gun or whatever that looks real, it's because the Pentagon let you use their base, because you've let them censor your script, right? So, there are lots of censors, but at least when it goes through the Pentagon, it goes through the United States. When it goes to the CCP, it goes through China. So if you're worried about, for example, the Chinese Communist Party determining what cultural products are produced in America for American consumption, then that's something that you should be worried about. That's something that you should be worried about. A guy named Roger Stahl does some work on this at the University of Georgia, and he kind of turned me on to that. But I think Matt Stoller's probably said something similar about CCP influence on cultural industry in the United States. But that's just one thing. And then, the influence of the Knesset, Israel's policy on U.S. domestic policy, who we police and what kind of speech we police in the United States might be determined by some foreign government. Because now, apparently, if you talk badly about Israel, you're an anti-Semite. Now, I've done a video before that we, as Americans, just might need to be comfortable being anti-Semites, if that's going to be the definition of anti-Semitism. Because we can't run away from that kind of definition and censor our speech about a foreign government. Or that's an instance of that foreign government censoring what we can say in the United States, especially since we give them so much money. I think that's a problem where we just need to embrace Americans being considered anti-Semitic. And that's just something we're going to have to do. And also with AI is having a lot of hiring decisions. AI is making a lot of decisions in our lives. And we have to understand that that's AI kind of encroaching upon the political responsibility of governance that decides what kind of jobs we have in the United States. Or even of civil society, where instead of the market deciding what kind of jobs we have the algorithm deciding what kind of jobs we have in the United States. So we have to understand that these encroachments of civil sovereignty, that means when I talk about civil society, I talk about the market-based system by which we make and produce goods and services for each other in the United States. The way in which foreign powers, foreign factors, whether those foreign factors are alienated from our intelligence, like AI is, alienated from our political processes, like the CCP or the Knesset is, influence how we run things in the United States. And if we're actually serious about being a sovereign nation, we need to look at those and kind of have systems internally to make sure that our wills, our communal wills, are what determine the shape of our civil society, and not, an algorithm that's programmed by some nefarious factor that we've offloaded a lot of our cognitive decision-making power to, or like some alienated government in Israel or in China that determines what we make and produce and consume in the United States. So, insofar as Trump's fight is the fight against civil takeover, other people deciding, or other factors alienated from our political will deciding how we unify this nation through this system of civil society, as long as other factors are doing that and not like American political processes and American governance deciding that like we, regulating the goods and services that are allowed in the United States, then that's a just fight. So we have to honor the fact that we should make and produce the content of our goods and services that we consume in the United States insofar as we want to determine our way of life. It's a matter of self-determination. That kind of civic sovereignty where we actually produce and decide what's produced and how it's produced, if it's going to be consumed here and by us and with our dollars and with our tacit support, that sort of civil sovereignty is part of self-governance. It's not just a government by the people or part of self-determination. It's not just the U.S. as a government by the people and for the people and of the people. It has to be also a civil society that is by the people and for the people and of the people, right? So insofar as our civil society is shot through with services by and for others, then that's a problem with like a form of freedom that is supposed to go with American society. And the Democrats need to respond to this in a responsible way and not just laugh off the need for Trump's. And not just laugh off the need for Trump's tariffs. But instead understand that if we are going to be a free nation, that means we need political institutions of freedom and self-determination, but we also need civil institutions of freedom and self-determination. That means we need to make and produce the things that we decide to make and produce, and not have those things be determined by factors alienated from our will. And AI is alienated from our will, and also the CCP is alienated from our will, and Israel is alienated from our will. So we need to actually form institutions for a robust self-governance, which includes a quality of civil sovereignty. By the way, if you read, I guess it starts in Book 2 of the Republic. This is what Book 2 of the Republic is about. Like, Book 2 of Plato's Republic, he goes into how, in order for people to live, we need to depend on goods and services from other people, and that can be regulated through a marketplace, which could be good. But if it's just regulated through a marketplace, the polis implodes rather quickly as people buy and sell things that they shouldn't buy and sell. So the whole country, this whole city gets addicted to opium or meth, or like the dark web becomes a thing and people are ordering assassinations on things. And then our appetites get out of control. So we need to start conquering other nations in order to sustain our own appetites. And all of this is just bad. So we can't have unregulated markets. And the purpose of government then becomes to have a free market that is nevertheless unified by a state. Or a polis for Plato. And the rest is figuring out how to unify that market. So there you go. There's a little bit of philosophy from the Funky Academic. By the way, if you appreciate what I'm doing, which I think you should, go over to www.funkyacademic.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month. And I'll keep doing what I'm doing, because I think in the next few years, someone's going to have to explain to you Trump's America and the appeal, because the vulgar materialists who will just say it's egg prices or gas prices or the 401ks that keeps this man in power aren't going to, it's not going to hold on. It's not going to make sense, because I think he can raise prices on things. Inflation can continue to go up. Houses can continue to be unaffordable, but the JD Vance will win in 2028 unless you understand the arguments and like the ideology underpinning the arguments for GOP governance. Right? And if you understand the ideology underpinning the arguments for GOP governance, then you'll understand that the Democrats, as it stands, are not up to snuff. So either we need a third party, or we need to dislodge some of those dingbats with a very well-credentialed dingbats who are very high in the party. Right now, we need to dislodge them if you want a really robust alternative to GOP governance. Right. So civil sovereignty is a thing when we know it's a thing when we talk about AI, because we don't want AI making decisions about what jobs are hired and making hiring and firing decisions and making decisions about what's produced and sold in the nation. We know that. And insofar as robots are doing those things, it's because the robots are an extension of a human will. It's not an artificial intelligence. We want intelligence deciding the goods and services that are made in the United States, not artificial intelligence. And we also don't, but that's the same impetus that wants to distance ourselves from the influence of Chinese production in determining what's made and produced, the goods and services that are made and produced in the United States. Because if, the standards and the rules, especially with respect to licensing and issues with respect to licensing and production and quality of the CCP in China, then come to infect our quality of life in the United States, that's not the same as self-governance, right? That's not the same as not only self-governance, that's not the same as self-determination, right? So when we talk, like I said, when we talk about a government that's for the people and by the people, and of the people, that's not just the political apparatus, it's also the civil society the sectors of civil society. You need a civil society that is by, of, and for the people. The U.S. people, right? So until the Democrats are honest about that, and how the standing liberal order is casual about outsourcing civil society's power and civil society's productive power. And if Marx is right about one thing, he knows that real power is in the power of production, not consumption. And so far as we are so casual about outsourcing production to nations and factors and states that might not have the United States' best interests in mind, then that's something that we need to address, and we need to tool our society for, so that we produce our own things. And I just wish that Democrats would speak like this. Now, there was that Hunt, I can't remember his name. That's how powerful he was. I think he was out of Ohio. Yeah. Who actually understood the talk about production, but he was talking about it in terms of jobs, and jobs are very important. But talking about it, production and the importance of producing things in the United States, and at least not be dependent on foreign nations for things that we need for basic industries, needs to be reiterated by Democrats in terms of civic sovereignty, not necessarily in terms of jobs. Although it's a very good jobs point, but it needs to be talked about in terms of sovereignty. All right, so thank you for your time. Once again, if you appreciate what I'm doing, I think you should go to www.funkyacademic.com, kick in $5, $15, $50 a month. This is how I feed my family, and I will talk to you about something different at another time. My own children are going to run in the the district championships tomorrow, so that's kind of exciting. My kids are going to do the mile and the 2 mile, and then my little one, my 7-year-old, since they don't have a mile, he's doing the 800, and he's on pace to break the state record for 8 and under 800. He runs 250s, and I think the state record for his age range is 252. And when I run it with him, he ran a 248, and he was like right next to me, and I was like, wow, we're cooking. So, and he's 7 years old, and so that's kind of cool. He ran a 6:06 mile, so I think he's not going to run a mile tomorrow, but next week he's running a mile again, his last mile of the season, and I think he's going to go 6 minutes. So that's kind of excited. Any chance of a show on how to get a family going after 40 or so? Coleman Silk, how to get a family going after 40 or so. I am after 40, but my family's cooked. I got 3 kids who are old. I don't know how to get a family I can think about it. Maybe Coleman Silk. I might think about a show that gets you on how to start a family over 40. I do know that if you're raising a family, you need to raise your own kids. I'm not saying you necessarily need a homeschool, but don't listen to the liberals who will tell you to give your kids devices and outsource parenting. You need to raise your own kids, or your kids will be degradations. They might be slight degradations, or they might be massive degradations, but they will still be degradations. You need to raise your own kids and do not expect them to know anything or be able to do anything that you didn't teach them yourself. Especially black people. No institutions work for us. You need to do it yourself. And if you don't like what I'm saying, and a lot of women aren't going to like what I've said, because a lot of feminism has told you that like you can outsource this while you're off being a bad boss babe. But it turns out that you can't, and you're screwing up your kids because you didn't take that direct responsibility seriously. Now, I've helped you with this. Now, I'm not saying you have to homeschool. I'm saying you need to be responsible for what they learn. And you need to be on it. And what they do, too, and the specific skills that they pick up, you need to be responsible for teaching them. And if you're not responsible and up to teaching them, then like you can't be surprised when they don't know anything. All right. So my 7-year-old's, I think, on pace to run a 6-minute mile next week. And I think the whole family's going to get out in 6 minutes. I think because my 12-year-old daughter ran a 6:15 at the beginning, 6:16 at the beginning of the season. My 10-year-old daughter ran a 6:10. So I feel like in a week, they're both, the whole family's under 6 minutes, is at 6 minutes or under, which I think is awesome because I like when they're faster and better than I am. And there was no way I could run a 6-minute mile when I was their age. So, you know, your kids should do better than you are at everything. It was more around how does one find Coleman Silks House. His question was, it was more around how does one find the right partner after 40? Oh, okay. So like, let's say I'm 47 right now. If I were dating right now, I would go to run clubs. Like all these Fleet Feet and all these running stores have a 5K that they do every week, a weekly fun run. And you just go because I need someone who's active. And I need someone who's not going to get fat. And so you go, and I can talk like this because this is my show and I can talk the way I want. So I need someone who's active and I need someone who's not going to be fat. So that'd be a good place for me. And if I wasn't going to do that, I would pick up a dance. I'd pick up partner dancing because they're always short of men. And partner dancing, like learn a plus. It'd be fun to learn how to salsa or samba or whatever. Partner dancing. And they're always short of men, and you get to like see how a girl moves, and they'll be great. There'll be a room full of women who are happy that you showed up, so that would be excellent. And also book clubs are great because guys don't read or read fiction, and women still read fiction, and so if you find a book club and you're willing to read the book, it'll just be well-read women there. Although that might be hard to find in person, but you could try to start one on Craigslist or something like that. I wouldn't go with the apps because that might be a little bit dicey because I just imagine guys like me don't do very well on apps. I don't know, maybe I would. I don't know. By the time I was looking for a partner, I don't know if I was in the post-app world, but I would go for run clubs attached to a running store. Dance classes because they'll always just be happy that a dude's there. And book clubs. There you go. Ways to meet smart, interesting women who can move. That's how I'd do it. If I were over 40, if it were me on the market, that's what I'd do. All right. So Khalil English says, most of the way we run society will become antiquated as we're entering a multipolar society. How do you prepare your children for the market changes ahead? Okay. Well, I still think that critical thinking is going to be at a premium. People who can solve problems. It will also be hunted, but it'll be at a premium. And that's going to be my next show, I think, how we're becoming Eloy. People who can't critical think because we think that AI solves our problems. And the seductions of easy answers has made us unable to sustain serious thoughts and solve serious problems. So if you train your kids to actually be able to sustain problems, just treat them like Jews. Treat them like Orthodox Jews. Sustain them, be people of the book, and definitely take the screens out of their hands so that they can sustain both an argument and a thought and solve problems. And I think that there will always be a market for them, right? That's what I think. I don't know if you'll always make a ton of money, but you'll always be able to find a nut. I don't think you need to make a ton of money to be happy in the United States. I think if you make a ton of money, you're happy, but just striving, I think people are losing making $100,000 a year and screwing up their family, or living in a place where it takes $150,000 to live. So either you make a ton of money and live in a city, or I think you find yourself a job that's fulfilling where you don't have to make a ton of money and you move someplace with certain cultural amenities, but with a lower cost of living. I don't believe. Yeah, I know a lot of people who work too much for money, for not enough money, but it's still more money than I make, but it's still not enough money to I get to see my kids, right? I get to run with my kids. I get to swim with my kids. I get to actually, and I think it's a meaningful part of my life. So I'm raising my kids to be the kind of parent that I am, because I want my kids to have good grandkids. And I think that that's possible even in a world full of robots and AI and all of that stuff. There'll be a place for critical thinkers. And if you want me to help you raise your kids, you should go to www.funkyacademic.com, kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month. So The Knowledge Economy by Roberto Unger. So there are a lot of jobs I don't know, and I realize that there are a lot of jobs I don't know about because I only know how to do like 4 or 5 things. I've had more jobs than that. But there are a lot of jobs I don't know about. I guess if I knew more, I would say just become an engineer because you'll always need engineers. But I don't know. Like, I'm training my kids to be judges, law professors. Law professor is the default fallback career of all the Osei-Frimpongs, because I think I can take someone from this household to law professor pretty seamlessly. And if they somehow get off that track, that's something that I can deal with. That it'll be for a better track, because we're going to need law professors, and there you go. So thank you for your time. I will talk to you when I talk to you. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them in the comment section. And yeah, go kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month, because you're not getting this anyplace else on the internet. Peace.